Boston, the winningest sports city this century. Each championship deriving from a plan. Join us as we discuss the next Boston Banner Blueprint with your hosts, Josh Finkel, Nick Walsh, and Nate Philbrook.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Boston Banner Blueprint podcast. I'm here with Nick, and subbing in for Finkel is PT on this episode. We're coming to you with some somewhat breaking news. But before we do that, go ahead and follow us on all the socials. That starts on Twitter/X at Boston Banner BP, Boston Banner Blueprint on both Facebook and Instagram, and then Boston Banner Blueprint on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Go like, subscribe, rate 5 stars, and share with your friends and family. Do all the things to keep supporting the show. But without further ado, Nick, I'm going to kick it to you first to kind of break down the biggest Celtics news in a while.
Yeah, so we've been knowing for the last 9 months or so that the Celtics were being sold. And we heard that it was supposed to be towards the end of 2024, early 2025. And finally that hammer dropped where we finally learned who the new owner is going to be other than the Grossback family, where most of our fans, the Celtics fans, I think a lot were rooting for and hoping it was going to be Steve Pagliuca. And a surprising twist, it was none other than a Bill or William, to be more formal, William Chisholm, which before yesterday, I think I can speak for at least the three of us on this show, and probably the vast majority of Celtics fans, we had no idea who the hell this guy was. And that's not saying it as a bad thing or anything like that. We just had no idea who. You heard names early on, like the Bezos were going to be involved, or a month ago, the Eagles owner, Jeffrey Lurie. We always knew Pags was, and Pags knew he put out the same day that the news broke that they were up for sale, that he was going to be in the bidding process. So, but I know last week, like 4 different names were put in as finalists, but I don't know if you guys are like me, but I get out of work 4:30 in the afternoon, and on my commute home, I'm always usually listening to EEI or the Sports Hub 9 times out of 10, and it just so happened to be
not a sponsor.
Not sponsored. That's not a plug. Probably the vast majority of reasons why I usually have a negative attitude and pessimistic attitude is my brain is washed through all that. But they have Felger and Maz had Chris Mannix on just the day before, basically saying we were months out from an actual formal announcement, and that Pags was the leader in the clubhouse, so to speak, of what the industry thought was going to be the new owner. So for this to just drop less than 24 hours really after that, I think it was a shocker. Like, Nate, I think you put in our group chat that, like, usually I'm the one who gets the Celtics news first for our chat, because I got Sham and all the local writers like tweets on notifications, and I just hadn't seen it yet. And all of a sudden you blast us, well, there's the Celtics breaking news, and it's like, wait, what? So
you know me, I'm your classic Celtics breaking news guy.
Yeah, so
that's my role here.
Nate's got the in.
Exactly. So it was like between the Mannix thing the day before, and then you're the one who threw it in the chat. It's like, what the hell am I missing? But I think really the news yesterday, we won't know if it was a good day to be a Celtics fan or a bad day to be a Celtics fan until a year is down the road. Because I think we can all agree that Chisholm was saying the right things yesterday on his media tour, that it was all things you want to hear. But I'm sure the new owners a couple of years ago in Dallas were saying the same thing. And then they go ahead and pull the dumbass move of the century in trading Luka Doncic. Like, so Chisholm can be saying all the right things, but in 2 years, if he's showing Brown and Tatum the door, are we going to look back at this and be like, well, this was the beginning of the end? Or is he going to make true on his promises of he he grew up here. He knows, he says he's a diehard Celtics fan, and he wants championships for the long run in some of his statements. But is he going to put his money where his mouth is? And if he does, he's going to be beloved. If he's going to turn into the Dallas Mavericks owners, I think we can get the pitchforks and torches ready. But we won't know that until years down that road. But what were your guys'
I was going to
thoughts?
say, but before we go too far and start burning bridges, PT, I want to hear your take as your first episode as a co-host here. And for those that don't know, we call him PT because he's producer Tony. He's the one that makes all the magic happen. So, Tony C, let's hear what you thought of the C's being sold.
Well, I remember when I first heard they were going to be put up for being sold, I was like, oh man, I just felt we were going to get an awful owner. I don't know why. I had the worst feeling in the world. But seeing this news, I had no clue who the guy was. Just like Nick said, I had to go do my own research, figure out who he was. But the first headline is, when you put this guy in, is he's a Mass native. And I know for some people, could be a turnoff if you, like, your owner, you don't want them to be from there. Me personally, I like it. I like it because I think this guy is going to put his money where his mouth is, and he's going to be committed to helping the Celtics win. Now, to what extent? I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here, but I don't think he's going to be paying out the contracts like we are right now. I think there's going to have to be cuts made eventually, especially with a new ownership group. But Nate, what do you have to say on this topic?
Yeah, I think honestly the thing that I was most curious about is why you didn't put a bid in. But no, so I mean, in all seriousness, I think this was certainly coming down the pike for a little while now, as we had talked about a few episodes back. But seeing that it wasn't Fenway Sports Group just kind of was a relief. I know that there was
Great point.
rumors at
Great
one point. There was rumors at one point, and then those got squashed, and then it kind of resurfaced again. And so it was like, are they in? Are they out? And so just the fact that it wasn't Fenway Sports Group was certainly nice. But yeah, I also had no idea who the guy was, currently operating out in California. And so certainly, I think it's an interesting acquisition. And to your point, Nick, I think it was one of those deals that kind of came at the last minute. He met the price, and then he met the terms by the sounds of that he's giving up governance of the team for the first 3 years. Am I correct there?
Yep. That was one of the things that Wick wanted from the very beginning. He said it was going to be sold in two parts, and he was going to stay on as governor until the second aspect of the sale, which I believe is 2028. And this is where I'm not good at finances or anything like how these big mega companies are sold. So I can't get into the X's and O's of that, but it was surprising that Chisholm came out and said that, yeah, Wick's going to be on for the next 3 years as well as CEO and governor still. So I'm skeptical, to say the least, of how that's going to work. Like right now, where you're in like this honeymoon period, I get it. But the moment that first big decision that it's going to be franchise altering comes aboard, is that going to be the case? Like, it's kind of like Wick is in this weird place where he wants all the credit of this championship window, and rightfully so. Like, he's the owner as it was being built in this the blueprint of this hopeful Celtics dynasty that we're on the verge of. I understand he would want the credit for that instead of leaving after the first championship. But he also runs the risk, like, if he's still the governor for the next 3 years and they do want to cut payroll, which you can't blame Chisholm if he does, because the $500 million in tax, in the luxury tax. But all of a sudden, if Wick's sitting courtside and Tatum's getting traded and Brown's getting traded and all that, now is he going to be public enemy number one, because he's still going to be the face of it for the next 3 years? So it's kind of a roll of the dice for Wick. I understand why he wants to be the face of it, but I'm skeptical of this partnership if Wick makes it the full 3 years. Because you kind of saw it with Mark Cuban, where Mark Cuban was supposed to have the same role. But the moment Luka got traded, he's sitting there like, hey, it's not me. It's those guys. Like, technically, Mark Cuban's still supposed to be the governor of the Mavericks. But the moment one big negative decision was made, Cuban kind of like wiped his hands of it and distanced himself. So we'll see how the next 3 years plays out.
Nick, I like your perspective on this because I'll be honest, it's a lot different from what I like when I heard this news of what I was thinking. You definitely have the pessimistic side of things, but I looked at it like, yeah, no, it's a big shock to anyone listening at home. Yeah. But no, to me, I thought this was a great thing for the new ownership because to me, it tells me that they don't want to be the center of attention and they care about winning, leaving Wick in this position. And I know this was a term, but they still have to sacrifice that part of it. And I think of like, this is just the biggest owner I can think of that wants to be the center of attention is Jerry Jones. That is not who I want our owner to be like, to be fair. That is not the guy I want ownership to be like. I want ownership to have trust in people that have done it before and they can go out there and get it. So that he's leaving Wick out there to do this job, I like it. And I understand what you're saying, Nick, is down the line when they do, because they are inevitably going to have to make pay cuts. It's going to have to happen. Right. Someone's going to have to get snipped at the end of the line here. And, Wick is going to be in that position. And could it go wrong? Maybe. I don't think it will, but it could down the line.
Right. And I think no matter who the new owner was going to be, and hypothetically, if they never put the team up for sale and it was Wick moving moving forward, I think you were going to see a move either of like a Drew Holiday or a KP player get moved this offseason regardless because of the second apron in that. So I'm still expecting a major move this offseason. And if it is a Holiday or a KP, I can't really blame Chisholm for that. That's going to be, as long as he's not a meddling owner. If he still lets Brad Stevens be Brad Stevens, I understand there's going to have to be some parameters in place for payroll and luxury tax and all that. But if you're not meddling in roster decisions and simply saying, hey, this is the budget, this is what we're going to pay, figure it out from there. We just saw Baylor Sharman score 24th quarter points the other night as a rookie. Let Brad cook. Don't piss Brad off. Keep Brad happy. Keep him in place, and go from there.
So, do you guys think that this is something that will lead to, the Celtics either making a bid for and acquiring TD Garden, or is this something that you see them potentially branching out away from the Jacobs family and the Bruins and having an arena of their own?
Nate, that's a great question because in the interview, he was asked about that towards the end. It was kind of one of the awkward questions that got brought up was if they would be remaining there. And his answer was, to me, it sounds like he wants to remain in TD Garden. Will that happen? I don't know. I think it's going to come down to money in the end, but it sounds like he wants to remain there because of the historical presence it has and the championships that have already been won there. To me, that's what he's leaning towards. But I think in the end, it's just going to come down to money and what makes the most financial sense.
Right. And
it always does.
Yeah.
And that was one of the shockers for me yesterday. They poured cold water all over that story right away. And I think it's more so I want to know what that lease contract is with the Jacobs family, because they just renewed it a few years ago to go through the middle of the 2030s. I think it goes through 2036 or something like that. So it's 11 years out. So I want to know what the penalty is for breaking that lease early. And if obviously Wick and Chisholm know what that is, so is it financially irresponsible to break that lease early? And they're looking at hey, we're 10 years down the road, but also new stadiums and new arenas take time. There's processes and corporate red tape that you have to go through. So I think we'll learn pretty quickly if they're serious about that, because if all of a sudden you start getting reports out, hey, they're looking into real estate areas in the North End or something like that, or or in Everett, I think was one of the.
That's the one I heard the most, and
It
is
was
Everett over there.
Everett, right?
Yeah.
Or by like the casino and all that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what it was rumored to be. Like
Right.
if it doesn't happen, and that's area. That area makes sense to me. I would honestly, personally, I'll ask you guys this after. So Nick, continue. I want to jump ahead, but I got a question for you guys.
Yeah, I was going to say. So we'll learn, like maybe not this year, but in the next couple of years, if they're starting to poke around, we know that a new arena is coming. But one things that Wick did say is they've had a good partnership with the Jacobs family, and they kind of want to keep that partnership going. So if there is a new arena coming, I think it's going to be for both the Celtics and the Bruins. I don't think you're going to get one arena specifically for each.
So I'll pose you guys with this question. Would you rather them get a whole new arena, or do you want them to stay at TD Garden? In your ideal world,
I would want them to get a new arena, but I would want it to be in the exact same location, right on Causeway Street.
All right, so you just want a
renovation.
Yeah, right, that's not happening.
Right, well, they did it. They did it 30 years ago. They tore down the original garden, built the TD Garden right there. I would want them to, because Jersey Street, Yawkey Way, whatever you want to call it. Like, I know there's politics around that, but Fenway is synopsis of that. Like, when you think of Fenway, that's the address you think of. When you think of the Bruins and the Celtics and the Garden, you think of Causeway Street. I want them to stay in that neighborhood because, like you said, PT, the historical aspect of it, the banners, the championships, the story of those two franchises are right there. They've been there for 90 years. I believe that's how old the original Garden would be, roughly. So I don't want them to leave that and like just change that. But like if anyone's been to TD Garden, it's not that great of an arena. Like
that's my so that was going to be my point. Is unlike Fenway, that is, if we're being honest, it's the nostalgia of Fenway that draws people in, that makes it what Fenway is. It's not because they have superior seating or events.
Definitely not that. Those seats in the world.
And if you're sitting and you're staring out at center field instead of looking at home plate.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I remember taking someone to a game several years back, and one of us could see the pitcher and not the hitter, and the other could see the hitter and not the pitcher. And it's like, this sucks. But anyway, because, baseball, every field has their own uniqueness, whereas basketball, hockey, every playing surface is the exact same. Right. And so that's where to me, it's a lot less impactful to move those teams to a updated arena that can offer a lot of those things. I mean, I'm certainly biased, but the now Lenovo Center here in Raleigh is gorgeous. And that's a stadium that, regardless of where you sit, you're going to have a great seat. Regardless of where you sit, you're going to have room. You're going to be comfortable. Like, that's something that I think could be improved upon, that where they're currently at, it would be a real tough fit. So I wouldn't be as opposed to the team moving. But again, I'm not footing the bill. So
it's not our money, as we like to say.
That is correct. So the one thing, and not to jump around too much, but one thing that I wanted to kind of comment on with the governance of the team, particularly over the next couple of years, is, do you guys find it interesting at all that this is, a record-breaking $6.1 billion deal that this guy forks out, and now all of a sudden is going to hand the team to somebody else for the next, really foreseeable future, that he could be at 3 years from now truly acquiring a very different team than what we see right now in the Boston Celtics. And so how do you guys feel like that plays in? Because that, to me, that just seems like I'm not going to say a desperation move to be able to agree to that, to be able to acquire this team. But also at the same time, like, it doesn't not look desperate to be able to get that deal done.
Well, I like how you asked us this question after we talked about the arena, because I think it's hand in hand in the sense that I am surprised they got 6.1 billion, and some reports say that in 3 years it can be 6.7 when the deal finally completely closes, because they don't own the arena. Like, you're losing out on a ton of revenue. So the fact that they don't own their own arena, yes, I was shocked at the 6.1, because we were hearing that they wanted at least 5, and 5.5 was the preferred number. But the NBA wanted 6 because of the 2 expansion teams that are coming in Seattle and Vegas, which are the 2 likeliest locations. So I think the NBA as a whole should be very pleased with that number. But from a Bill Chisholm point of view, I am surprised that that's what the number ended up being, because not owning the arena and the luxury tax bill that's about to be coming in the next couple months.
Well, and two, before I throw it to you, PT, for the same question, is as the resident money guy, I thought it was really interesting. So if you look at what the Gross Specs paid, Nick, when did they buy the team?
2002.
So 2002 is 360 million, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then to 6.1 billion. If you take that growth and spread it out over the year, 20 plus years that they've owned the team, it's a 13% annualized return. That's not staggering. That's not something that, you would normally see. I mean, normal portfolios will do that all the time. And so that's something that I certainly thought, looking at the numbers, it looks like a holy cow, they went from 360 to 6.1 billion, but at the same time, it wasn't as staggering a return on investment as I thought it would be. Certainly wouldn't turn it down. Let me be very, very clear. 13% annualized is tremendous. But when you look at these sports deals, you'd think it would be, astronomical. And it didn't seem as though that was the case. But I do think the arena aspect played a big role. So, PT, same question to you.
Yeah, but before I answer, Nate, if you can, what would you have thought the cost would have been, stadium included, or I should say arena included?
Well, I mean, it was already record-breaking, right?
Yes.
So you have to kind of put a number on what the facility itself would be worth. Generally speaking, those are existing arenas, particularly ones that probably could use some renovations or remodeling. They're going to run you, a couple $100 million usually, which is only going to get you in the mid 6 point something range. But also the revenue that it generates in that area. So, I don't think it would be crazy different, but 7.5, something like that.
Yeah. So getting back to your original question, yeah, it did look a little desperate, to be honest with you. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, that he went and did this. And I think just it is odd too that he is letting him have the team for 3 years on his own. That's not like common. That doesn't happen all the time when owners want. You're going to buy a team like the Celtics right now. You want to be the one getting the credit for them winning. As Nick said earlier, we have no clue what 3 years down the line this team is going to look like. You'd assume Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown will still be on the team, but who knows how things shakes out? Who knows if, God forbid, one of them has a career-ending, altering injury or something like that. So I don't know. It's definitely interesting.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, that you want your owner to be that way, because you're right that this is a guy that was a lifelong Celtics fan and has since now purchased the team. That you want we were talking about this with John Henry, many, many episodes ago, of you want your owner not only to be financially, but also emotionally bought into your team. That's how, as Bostonians or as New England fans, like that's how we resonate with these guys that clearly are in a different stratosphere and live a different life than guys like you and I. And so we want them to share the same fandom rather than it just be a money-making tool. So I'm glad you brought that up, as I don't see it as a desperation move, but I'm glad that he was willing to put it on the line to get it done, to be able to acquire his favorite team. So, Nick, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say, you kind of hit on the head. Like, you kind of want him to feel like this is his like hobby, his play toy, and not another notch in his portfolio. Because at least if he's truly about championships and winning and all that, he isn't going to get that 13% ROI in the next few years. It's going to be a while before he gets a return on investment because we all know the luxury tax bill, and I don't really want to rain on Steve Pagluca right now, but in his statement that he put out there, there's one line in there that I wish Chisholm had, which again, Chisholm was saying all the right things yesterday. I really have no complaints on the guy, and I don't want this to come off as I'm shitting on him because I'm not. But the one line in I want to read off of Pag's comment. Additionally, I recruited new partners with deep resources and expertise in technology and international markets to maximize the Celtics' success to ensure we can always compete for championships. Luxury taxes be damned. Like, if that's the attitude Chisholm's going to have, like, screw the luxury tax. Like, let's go put our dicks on the table and show the rest of the league, like, piss off. We're winning. We own this next decade. You're not touching us. Like, I don't care if we go in the hole for 5 straight years. But realistically, is that any realistic expectation we can have for owners to go that deep into financial handcuffs? I understand. That's why I want to be fair to Chisholm. Like, if you're shedding payroll on a Holiday or a Porzingis, I get it. Like, that's the parameters the CBA and the NBA has done the last couple of years to kind of stop the formation of super teams. But if he wants to blow right past that and say, screw it, for the next 5 years, we got this window. We don't know if something like this will ever come along again where all the pieces fit perfectly. He's gonna be a god in this town. But by the sounds, Pags was ready to do it. I just hope Chisholm is.
By all accounts, he seems like he is, right? I mean, he like you said, he put his money where his mouth is to acquire the team. When it comes to what style of owner he's going to be or anything like that, it's to be determined. To your point, he said all of the right things, but until you prove it, we just can go off of what you've done thus far. And thus far, he's purchased for a record-breaking amount. So you have to look at it in a positive light at this point, as hard as that may be for you sometimes.
Right. Well, like I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'll judge him on that the day it comes, but I'm also, you can't not be skeptical because we don't know what's coming down the pipe. Like, I want to believe that he's going to be like the Grossbeck family out of the last few years and say, hey, we're going to throw money to the wind for a little bit and we're going to maximize this window. And that's one of the things why we love Wick in the last few years, because out of the 4 owners, he definitely was the one who showed that financially and as a fan that he cared the most. Like, he's always courtside. He's throwing around money like it's candy the last few years. Like, there was never a point where you question Wick's passion for the team. So if that's how Chisholm's going to be, I hope that's how he's going to be. Then there isn't anything to be concerned with, but I'm more concerned of we don't know until we know, basically.
Right.
Nate, I thought it was funny you brought up what kind of style owner he's going to be. And one comment that kind of struck me in his interview was he was talking about the 2008 championship team, and he said what his favorite player on the team was. Do either of you know who he said? It is so random. I never even knew who this guy was. I was 5 at the time when we won this. Keep in mind, but this guy I had never heard of. Leon Powell. He came off the bench for us, I'm pretty sure.
You don't know about Leon
I don't
Powell?
know anything about him, bro. I never heard of him until that interview.
Yeah. Okay, I kind of want to stop you there because can you say his name the way you said it first?
What is it, Poe or Powell?
Okay.
I can't remember.
Anyone who is old enough and alive enough, and I shouldn't say alive, but old enough and
If you're alive enough.
Right. Well, I've been watching the Celtics documentary every Monday, and they're in the 60s and 70s. There's some people that are dead by that point who are our age watching that. So forgive me, but anyone that remembers the 2008 championship run, Game 2, and this isn't a Walsh's vault or anything like that. Game 2 of the NBA Finals, Phil Jackson, on the Mount Rushmore of NBA coaches in the history of the game, Leon Poe, it is Poe, was the player of the game, a role player in Game 2 of the NBA Finals. I think he had like 15 or 20 points or whatever, and a lot of it came off free throws. And Phil Jackson famously is sitting at the podium after the game, and he's looking at the stat sheet and he goes, "Excuse me, I don't understand how a guy like Leon Poe, had more free throws than our entire team." And it went, if social media was back in the way it was now, it was a viral clip then. It would have blown up the internet, and Phil Jackson got a lot of blowback at the time for that, for purposely mispronouncing the guy's name. Like, you really don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, and you're coaching against him in the NBA Finals? Get on out of here. Like, it was more of a mind thing to kind of like just show like, hey, this guy's really irrelevant in the league. Like, I don't even have to bother learning this guy's name. So when you accidentally announced his name like that, that's the first thing that popped into my head was Phil Jackson, Game 2, 2008. Hey, Leon Powell. It's like, what?
But to your point, PT, it was, it's a deep cut at this point of Celtics history. So, that is, again, encouraging that he's saying the right things as the new owner. So continue with your thought there. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm glad Nick knew all this about him, because he did mention Game 2 in there briefly of the reason why. And I was hoping Nick knew more about him than me, so he could see if is that a good player for our new owner to pick as his favorite player from that 2008 team? Is that a respectable pick, or is this a bad sign? Is that a bad sign that he picked that guy?
I mean, he wasn't a star, but he was a fan favorite. He was a, like, don't want to say Marcus Smart, because Marcus Smart was hot and cold of a favorite player. Like, you either love Marcus or you hated Marcus in this town. I was on the side that loved Marcus, but Leon Poe, everyone loved Leon Poe. Like, he was one of those role players that came off the bench, and I don't think anyone disliked Leon Poe. There was nothing really to dislike about him. So the fact that he picked him, I would say, is more of a good sign, because, like, if he was just picking Pierce or Garnett or one of the star players, it would be like, does this guy really know, or is he just kind of like reading the headlines type of thing? Like, everyone knows Pierce, Garnett, like, and all that. And it wouldn't be a bad thing, really, if he picked those guys as well. But the fact that he picked some role player, it would be like in 20 years or so that someone looks back and says, yeah, Payne Pritchard was my favorite player, or Sam Hauser or Luke Cornett. Like, we all have those fan favorites that we all like that isn't the star. So
respectable pick then? Yeah,
respectable pick.
Okay.
So before we switch gears to getting an update on the Celtics season, as they are, really coming to a close here in mid-March, if you're enjoying this episode, go ahead and follow us on whatever platform you are watching. Rate 5 stars, like, subscribe, all the things. Follow us on social medias at Boston Banner BP on Twitter /X, Boston Banner Blueprint on both Facebook and Instagram. But Nick, update us on where the Celtics are at, and then how the season is, as I mentioned, kind of coming to a close.
So yes, we're recording this on Friday afternoon. They started really their last big road trip of the season tonight in Utah. They're out west for the next week or so. They come back home at the beginning of April, like the 2nd and the 4th, I think. And Chisholm has already said he's going to be at those games. But they're basically locked into the second seed. Like there's no way they're catching Cleveland right now. Like that's basically out of the question. And there's no way the Knicks are catching them for second. So you're locked in at second no matter what. So this whole last month, kind of expect like fudging of the injury reports. Like expect Al Horford's left toe injury to be coming up every other night. I know Jaylen Brown's out tonight, which is going to be his second game in a row that he's going to miss, but he's going to be basically getting 7 days off. What they're calling a knee injury, I don't think it's really all that serious. I obviously am not a doctor, and I want to preface that, but by all accounts, I think they're
You're
just
not?
basically.
I thought you were.
If I am, take my advice and go somewhere else for medical advice.
Nick just has a doctorate in shit talking.
Basically, yeah, I would say a master's degree more than anything. But just they're at 50-19 right now. Like they got to 50 wins. We talked about the 40-20 rule where you want to get to 40 wins before 20 losses to be considered a true championship contender. Well, they got to 50 before they got to 20. But so have the Cavs. Like I really, if the standings ended today, like you're in a good spot because both the Cavs and the Bucks are in this other bracket of the East where you wouldn't have to face either of them until the Eastern Conference Finals. I mentioned the Bucks because I know PT in a previous episode said he still respects the Bucks and thinks the Bucks could be a tough matchup. I personally don't, but throwing that out there, like I think the Knicks are a joke, and you can kind of like top that up. Like that's going to be a gentleman's sweep or 6 at worst. But you're kind of locked in where it's going to be whoever you get out of the play-in game in round one. Basically, unless it's a couple of years ago where the Bucks lost to the 8 seed Heat. Usually the first and second seeds, you can kind of like round one's basically a tune-up, like get the dust worn off and get ready for the playoffs. Round one. Round two, you're basically looking at the winner of the Knicks series versus whoever they get out of the play-in. So Indiana or not Indiana, Detroit or like Atlanta or something like that is what you're kind of like looking at probably. So more than likely you're getting the Knicks in round two is what I'm trying to say. So as it stands today, you really don't have to worry about facing someone that could knock you off until the Eastern Conference Finals. If you get knocked off before that, something horribly went wrong. And I just hope that's not the case. I think you can chalk it up that they're going to be playing in the Eastern Conference Finals, more than likely against the Cavs, and I still take the Celtics in that.
PT, how are you feeling?
I mean, I want to play the Fink role and just disagree with everything Nick says, but it's hard to because I agreed with most of what you had to say on that. I mean, we are stuck at 2. That's where we're gonna be, and I'm fine with that. I don't. Doesn't matter to me 2 or 1. I don't see a big difference if we end up playing the Cavs and it does go to that game 7. Then we already had some problems as is. I don't think the Cavs should take us to 7 games ever. Yeah, I don't think anyone in the East should give us any problems. My Bucks take, it's funny you brought that up, Nick. I was watching a game either a night or 2 ago when they were playing because Damian Lillard is one of my favorite players in the NBA. It's always a guy I've liked, so I've kind of followed them. And yeah, no, the Bucks are not a threat anymore in my opinion. Yeah, look, my reasoning before was Giannis. He's one of the best players in the world when fully healthy. Dame's a great closer, but the rest of that team, the Celtics are so much better than them. And that's what it feels like with every team in the East. You go through, and the way we match up with them, Knicks, joke. Pacers, joke. Bucks, as I just said, joke. Pistons, you know what? Pistons give me a little bit, but they have no experience. No experience in the playoffs. So that's another team. Hawks, Magic, also jokes. Cavs, would win in 5 to 6 games, I think. They are a very well-rounded team, though. And they have a guy, which Fink was pooping on this guy last time we were talking about Celtics, Donovan Mitchell. That guy is a killer in the playoffs. He's like,
He is.
Donovan Mitchell's done nothing in the playoffs. And I'm like, I didn't say it in the episode, but he has one of the best playoff games ever. He scored like a top 3 playoff scoring game ever. So I don't know where that take is. Nate, how are you feeling about this season right now?
So, I mean, it's no secret that I'm the least knowledgeable on the Celtics amongst our Blueprint crew here, right? Now, one thing that I do want to just kind of throw out there is we've done a really good job of being true Boston homers when it comes to the Celtics and just talking like it's going to be a cakewalk to the finals. So, I mean, it is still a professional sport. You still have to go out and play the games. Where, to your point, you know, after what I have watched and what I've listened to and seen, I do think that, you know, the Eastern Conference Finals against likely the Cavs is probably going to be the first true test. But admittedly, that's what I like least about the NBA is how predictable it is until the very end. So that's my 2 cents is I don't have a true opinion one way or the other, but I just still need to play the games. It still needs to have some level of drama when it comes down to it.
I think that's funny you said that, Nate, how it's the Bostonian homerness of this, but it's like, I just think of it now where the Celtics are. It's where we were with the Patriots going back with Tom Brady when we'd get into the playoffs. It felt like we were going to the conference championship every year. And if we didn't go to that season was a complete disappointment. And that's where I'm at with the Celtics, to be honest. And I think that is a great place to be. That's all I gotta say. Great place to be.
It's a great analogy and you're probably not wrong because NBA, as I just mentioned, NBA is far more predictable than the NFL,
Yes.
Which speaks to the greatness of those Patriots teams. But you know, I think that's a great analogy that I hadn't thought of before. So I love that comparison.
And I know this is a Celtics episode, but when we were planning out this episode for Friday, we were originally going to talk Patriots. And then the news yesterday of Chisholm broke. And it's like, okay, we'll pivot and we'll make it a Celtics episode. But can I throw out one Patriots stat I read today? And you want to talk about insane stats. And this is more so about Brady than so much the Patriots. But in his 30s, so a whole decade from 30 to 39, Tom Brady went 51-1 in regular season home games against the AFC. 51-1. Can you guys name the one loss in his 30s? So for a whole decade.
No.
Against the AFC, you said?
Against the AFC, regular season home games against the AFC for a decade.
Who is one losses?
Yep.
Denver?
Week 17 of 2014 against Buffalo. Jimmy Garoppolo played the whole second half. So they already had, it was one of those games where the standings were all wrapped up and they were resting guys in the second half. So when Brady left, they technically were losing. So he gets credited with the loss. So basically, the guy went a whole decade being perfect at home against the conference. Like, you want to talk about insane and being consistently great and all that. Like, I heard that today and I would go, are you freaking kidding me? I thought I was done hearing Tom Brady stats that kind of like blew me out of the water. But you brought up the analogy of the Patriots. Basically, they played a 2-game season each year. AFC Championship game and the Super Bowl. Like, all you had to go was 2-0 in your 2-game regular season to be champions. Like, that's how dominant those teams were. So at least last year and looks this year like the Celtics are playing a 2-round season. Win the Eastern Conference Finals, win the finals, and you can kind of like chalk them into the Eastern Conference.
Any last takes before we put a wrap on our Celtics episode?
Yeah, I kind of want to just ask you guys. I know, PT, before the show, you say you watched the first couple episodes of Celtic City, the Bill Simmons documentary on HBO. How are you liking it so far?
I actually really like it. And that first episode, it kind of hooked me in. But now you got me saying you're telling me the third episode's the best one. I haven't watched that one yet.
I've watched it twice. I watched it Monday night as soon as it came out at 9:00, and then last night I actually drove up to New Hampshire to be with my parents this weekend. And my dad's just as big of a diehard Celtics fan, but let's be real, like guys in their 60s are not great at technology. So he doesn't know how to like pull up Max on our smart TV. So usually I'm the one like FaceTiming him and basically like
Bill.
walking.
Bill, come on, dude.
Right. So I got
That's
like
baseline knowledge.
Right, you would think, and he's going to be listening to this later. Like I kicked him
on
out.
HDMI 1, not 2.
Right.
Come on.
So I watched it with him last night when I got up here, and it was all about the 70s. And I thought there's 2 points I want to bring up. One, it's in the first couple minutes of the episode. I didn't know there was this strong connection between JoJo White, former Celtic great, RIP. He passed away a few years back. I didn't know there was a strong connection between him and Jason Tatum. Both came from St. Louis, but JoJo White, back then was neighbors with Jason Tatum's grandmother. So they lived side by side in St. Louis. So it was a really heart-wrenching, touching moment in the episode where I believe it was JoJo White's wife. JoJo passed away Tatum's rookie year. And that whole year they played the season with like that black stripe along the sleeve, like as a symbol of remembrance for JoJo White. And one of the game worn jerseys, Tatum actually signed and with a handwritten note, gave it to his wife, like how much he appreciated the history of JoJo and what he meant to be a Celtic and how he wanted to like follow in his footsteps. And just watching how those two connected, like we talk about the blueprint of the Celtics dynasty and all that. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown too, but Jason Tatum is the blueprint of this dynasty. Like it starts and ends with how Tatum is. And we talked about last Celtics episode, how he's kind of embracing that role where he's actually talking about he's chasing Larry Bird and all that. Like he's really diving into what it means to be truly a great Celtic. And he's on pace to be a top 3 Celtic of all time. Like it's going to be hard to catch the likes of Larry Bird, and it's impossible to catch Russell. Like those two are kind of set in stone, but he can get to 3, and maybe if he stays around for the next decade, maybe he can catch Bird, but I'm not putting that pressure on him. But just seeing him embrace that impact, like that role in Celtics history that he now is really looking into, is a good sign for Celtics fans.
PT, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'll keep it brief, but just to add on to what Nick said about Tatum. And this is kind of sounds what I'm about to say. It's like sounds obvious, but the best thing that happened for Tatum was winning the championship so young like he did, and Jaylen Brown winning the championship so young like they did. It not only just got rid of that stress of and worry about having to get that first one. Now these guys are chasing something that, to me, it matters the most over money, over everything. They're chasing legacy. They want to be not just the greatest Celtics ever. They want to be the greatest players ever. And I think people forget that Jaylen Brown, he thinks he's right there with Tatum. He doesn't. If you sat down with him, I bet if you asked who the best player on the Celtics was, and I'm not saying with like an interview and cameras, he would never say that. But in private, I bet he'd say himself. And I think that is a great thing to have. 2 guys that want to be historically great, and they're chasing a legacy.
Absolutely. And
So
you saw Tatum basically say that 2 weeks ago when they had the Laker game, where the reporter asked him, who would you rather have as a teammate, Luka or LeBron or whatever that question was, and without missing a beat, Tatum goes Jaylen Brown. Like those two in where it's so strange hearing 3-4 years ago, like the likes of Kendrick Perkins and Chris Broussards and all of them, the national talking heads saying, we got to break these guys up. At the time, they're 22 and 23 years old. Like, they're going to figure it out. Like, why? You got two of the best young wings in the league. Let them figure it out. There's going to be growing pains. And now that they've gotten the answers to the test and they are figuring it out, we're just seeing how goddamn special these two can be together. I just hope they can stay together.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, my closing thought is simply that I hope the Bill that just bought the Celtics knows how to work a smart TV better than Bill Walsh. But no, all jokes aside, is obviously that's the crux of the episode today, right? Is the sale of the Celtics. It brings some new energy, some new blood to a team that is on the path. That their blueprint is as strong as any in any sport, and so that's obviously exciting for both the podcast here as we get to continue to talk about them, as our other three teams are middling, but also as fans getting to watch them continue to do what we aspire Boston sports to do. And so the Celtics are really what's keeping the city of champions alive right now. So before we close this thing out, Nick, go ahead.
Yep. So what I really want to end this on is we mentioned the Celtics documentary in episode 3. I'm going to have one spoiler other than the JoJo White part. Of all weeks for that episode to air of this week, I didn't realize back in the late 70s, they also went through an ownership sale. John Y. Brown, I believe, was the new owner's name. No idea who this guy was, but I didn't realize Red Auerbach, Mr. Celtic himself, had a hand in the first 16 championships before he passed away in 2006. But Red Auerbach is like the godfather of Celtics basketball, as we all know. As they're at the podium introducing the owner, you can just see in the episode where Red Auerbach is basically like, oh, Jesus, get me the fuck away from this guy. Like, this guy, he's gone, like, and you could just tell that they hated each other from the get-go. Red had acquired like 3 high first round draft picks through shrewd trades and all that. And this owner goes behind Red's back and trades them all for a washed up Ben McAdoo in New York. And Red got so pissed that basically he put out a rumor that he was heading to the New York Knicks to get the fan base all riled up. To basically spite the new owner and to basically gain control back. Like that's like doomsday scenario of Bill Chisholm, that he's going to be this meddling owner and he's going to cause Brad Stevens, like, get me the fuck out of this place. I can't do this anymore. So like that is where my worry comes, because we just got that episode this week, and then 4 days later is the the sale announcement. So hopefully Bill Chisholm is more like Wick Grossback than he is John Y. Brown. And if he is, yesterday was a great day to be a Celtics fan. If he isn't, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, and hopefully we're raising banner 19 in a couple months. And at that point, who gives a shit? We're going to be celebrating and partying in the streets for the second summer.
So as we close this thing out, just going to give you a quick rundown of what to expect from the blueprint, as we should have a full roster starting next week. And then we do have a very special guest joining us for a MLB preview ahead of opening day. And so looking forward to that, looking forward to welcoming our guest on. For all of the Red Sox fans that listen to this show should know who that is. But without further ado, go ahead and follow us on the socials at Boston Banner BP, Boston Banner Blueprint on both Facebook and Instagram, and then Boston Banner Blueprint on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thank you so much for listening, and peace.